Okay, so we're going to dive into a really powerful and maybe a little counterintuitive idea today. And it's this: true power, real power, isn't about noise and spectacle. It's about peace. And I'm not talking about peace as in surrender. I'm talking about peace as a deliberate, powerful act of creating order out of pure chaos.
So let me ask you, what is real power? Seriously, when you picture it, what do you see? Is it the loudest person in the room? The biggest, most intimidating force? Well, we're about to flip that whole idea on its head.
All right, this slide, this is really the core idea that frames this whole thing. Think of it kind of like thermodynamics. You've got heat on one side, that's the spectacle. It's loud, it's chaotic, it's all shock and awe. But then on the other side, you've got light, and that's stability. It's clear, it's calm, it's orderly. Look, anyone can start a fire, right? But the real power, that comes from knowing how to turn all that chaotic heat into useful light.
So let's just make sure we're all on the same page with these terms. When we talk about heat, we mean the volatility, the outrage, all that noise, that feeling of constant crisis. And light is the exact opposite. It's clarity. It's a signal cutting through the noise. It's a measurable fix. Then there's this really cool term, a fire break. That's basically a system you design to stop a small spark from turning into a wildfire. And maybe my favorite, sovereign cool. You know what that is? It's just self-control at the top, the kind of calm that's actually contagious.
Okay, so how do you actually build this kind of power? Well, the idea is that it's not just one thing. It's like developing 5 interconnected muscles. You need a whole system of different strengths all working together.
Let's break these down. First, you've got kinetic strength. That's just a credible deterrence. You can't be a pushover. People have to know you can defend yourself. Then there's financial strength, having an economy that can take a hit without falling apart. Third is moral strength, and man, this one is tough. It's the restraint to not escalate when everyone is screaming for you to do it. Next up, strategic strength. This means building systems, institutions, that stay calm even when they get kicked. And finally, symbolic strength, having leaders who actually model dignity and composure. And here's the kicker: you need all 5. Take away even one of these pillars, and the whole thing starts to wobble.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds great in theory, but does it actually work in the real world? Well, let's look at 3 incredible examples from history. Leaders who made this exact pivot, trading all that spectacle for real, lasting stability. Our first case study takes us way back, over 2,000 years ago, to Emperor Ashoka in South Asia. And let me tell you, he started his reign as a textbook conqueror. But everything changed after one incredibly brutal war. He won, but the victory just felt hollow. So he had this complete change of heart. He took the entire machinery of his powerful state and redirected it away from conquest and towards compassion, building hospitals, promoting welfare, things like that. And this is what's so important to get. This was a massive show of strength. He didn't give up his power. He kept the scepter, as the quote says. He just re-aimed it. He chose the hard path of building order over the easy path of just taking what he wanted. And that's the legacy that actually lasted.
All right, for our next example, let's jump forward to a much more modern figure, Anwar Sadat. He was the president of Egypt, a man who was a career soldier. His entire life was pretty much defined by military conflict. And yet, in 1977, he does something absolutely unthinkable. He gets on a plane and flies to Jerusalem, deep into enemy territory, to negotiate peace directly. Can you imagine the risk? He was risking assassination, political ruin, everything.
So was that weakness? No way. It was the complete opposite. He basically spent his own personal legitimacy, put his life on the line, to buy something much more valuable, strategic quiet for his people. That's not being soft. That is pure, unadulterated nerve. And for our last example, we have to talk about Nelson Mandela. His story is just unbelievable. From 27 years as a political prisoner to the president of a nation that was just torn apart by apartheid. And think about it. After everything he went through, revenge would have been the easy option. It was right there for the taking, and a lot of people would have cheered him on. But he knew that would just create more heat, more fire. So he chose the much, much harder path, the path of an architect. He decided to build a durable, coexistent nation. And that right there is the essence of his power.
He saw the difference between a cheap victory, the sugar rush of vengeance, and an expensive victory, the kind that costs a lot up front but is durable and actually lasts. That single choice for coexistence literally changed the future of his entire country.
Okay, so those historical examples are incredible. But the big question is, how does this apply today? How could a leader right now put this idea into practice? Well, the source actually lays out a pretty clear playbook for it.
There are basically 6 signals you can send. First, you swap scoreboards. You stop talking about crushing your opponents and start talking about how things are going to get quieter. Second, you frame every deal around long-term stability for the next generation. Third is stage discipline. Fewer victory laps, more public commitments to the future. It's also about who you surround yourself with. You elevate the builders, not the people who just want to burn things down. You have to set the narrative yourself that real leadership is about building that fire break. And finally, you back it all up. You actually publish metrics that show the public, look, the temperature's dropping, things are getting calmer.
Now look, I get it. This whole idea, it kind of goes against everything we're used to seeing. So let's talk about the pushback. Let's tackle the most common objections you might hear.
So first up, the big one. Isn't this just naive? A nice little fairy tale, but totally unrealistic for the world we actually live in.
Well, the argument here flips that question right back on itself. What's really naive is thinking that a country, or the world, can survive indefinitely in a permanent state of fever, a constant state of outrage. That's just not sustainable. It's bound to burn out. Okay, and then there's the other classic criticism. Isn't this just appeasement? Just a fancy way of saying you're giving in? And the answer to that is a hard no. Here's why. Your deterrence, your ability to defend yourself, that stays. You absolutely keep that. The only thing that changes is the objective. You're no longer trying to humiliate your opponent. Your goal is now to create real, lasting stability. That's a huge difference.
Which really brings us to the heart of this whole thing, and this quote says it perfectly. Look, any leader can lash out. That's the easy part. But a power that can actually restrain itself, that shows real discipline, well, that's incredibly rare. And in the long run, it's so much more powerful.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. As you look around at the world today, at leaders, at companies, even just in your own community, ask yourself this simple question. Who's just making more heat? And who is actually building a fire break?